Hello, fight fans, and welcome back to the TWSN YouTube channel. We are back at you with another UFC preview show. My name is Ted Ashbrock. As always, I am joined by my co-host, Evan Theo Harris. Follow us on Twitter. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, comment your full picks, because today we are talking about UFC Orlando main card. They stacked it up for Florida again. Florida's showing UFC nothing but love. Dana's showing the love back again. Let's get right into it, Evan. First fight, we got Eric Anders versus Kyle Dawkins. Dawkins coming in after a rough loss, a beatdown from some guy we'll talk about here in a bit, Roman Deliza. That was just 5 months ago. I believe I read on Twitter that he broke his face in 3 places in that fight 5 months ago.
That's nasty.
Now he'll take on Eric Anders, who admittedly probably not as well-rounded as Kyle Dawkins, but Eric Anders can break faces. This could be a bit of a heater. Kyle Dawkins is a guy that likes to get a hot start. We saw him almost knock out and submit Kevin Holland in the same fight. Another guy we'll get to talk about later. A lot of roundabouts on this card. Honestly, they all fought each other already. But Eric Anders coming in plus 170, slight underdog. Honestly, any other time I'm picking Kyle Dawkins. I just don't think that fight is a 5-month layoff. I think that's you take the rest of the year off, you get yourself right, you go back in the gym, you see what you can do. Because I mean, he got beat up bad by Roman Deliza. I think Dawkins is more well-rounded. I think if it goes to the ground, he could easily submit Eric Anders. But I think Eric Anders does have enough power in his fist to just break his face in the 4th place. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I think this is a really tight fight. I don't like the odds on this at all. I mean, unless you like Anders in this fight, I wouldn't be betting it. I think minus 225 for Dawkins coming off that loss is definitely a bit much. I personally lean Dawkins in this fight. As you mentioned earlier, I think he is the more well-rounded fighter of the two. If this fight goes to the ground, the advantage is gonna go to Dawkins. But when you're facing someone like Anders who has that power and coming off that loss to Deliza, where, like we mentioned, that knockout was brutal. You know, his face got broken in, and but I am going to go with Kyle Dawkins with the more well-rounded game that he has over Anders. But I would stay away if you're betting Dawkins. But if you really are on the Anders train here, it's a good value, and I think he is a live dog for sure. But coming up next, we've got Jack Hermanson taking on Roman Deliza. Originally, he was supposed to fight Derek Brunson on this, but Brunson was removed, and Deliza is in on short notice. Personally, I'm going with the underdog here in Roman Deliza at plus 145. Hermanson's the slight favorite at minus 170. Deliza, he has been on a tear recently. The dude has looked unstoppable on the feet. Hermanson, he fought a good fight against Chris Curtis. He fought that fight how he needed to, and I could very well see this playing out the same way. He gets another short notice opponent in Deliza, and if he wants to stay on the outside and try and use those leg kicks and piece apart with his, I think he does have the superior distance striking. That could be how he wins this fight. But I'm rolling with the momentum of Deliza coming into this, and I think I don't know if he gets it done by as brutal of a knockouts as he's had recently, but I could definitely see this being a finish for Roman Deliza. But how do you see this fight playing out?
Yeah, I mean, listen, to anyone that doesn't know who Roman Deliza is and think this is just Jack Hermanson skating by on another, late replacement fighter, look at the odds. Those odds are telling. To be an unranked guy coming in against the 8th-ranked middleweight in the world, late notice, and you're only a plus 145 dog, I think he just has all the skill set to beat a guy like Jack Hermanson, too. If you're better than him on the feet and he can't take you down, we get what we saw with Sean Strickland. Just kind of a sparring battle that Jack Hermanson is slightly on the losing end of. If you get somebody that can really put some power into shots and knees particularly, you get a knockout like Jared Cannonier had on him. And I mean, look at the knees Deliza's been unleashed. Look at the elbows he's been unleashing. Look what he did. Now, obviously, there was a weird injury in that Phil Hawes fight, but we've seen guys get that injury and then not know how to finish the show. He finished the show pretty quick
he's
and in
a killer.
Pretty spectacular fashion. I'm not going to tell you he's going to finish Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson is a tough guy. I mean, like the shots that were thrown, that knee he ate from Jared Cannonier, that's about the only thing I've really seen him get put away with in recent time. But I'm leaning Roman Deliza, honestly. We saw just a guy that Chris Curtis is a friend of the show, fellow Cincinnati native. Love that guy. Love Action Man. He didn't have the time to develop. He didn't have the time to develop the game plan for Jack Hermanson that I think Roman Deliza can more step in with the natural height and strength. Chris Curtis is he's huge. Yeah. And Chris Curtis is a career welterweight, big reach disadvantage. That isn't in this fight. I think Jack only has about a 1-inch reach advantage. And the other thing is Chris just wasn't able to get inside. It wasn't that he wasn't pushing the pace. I think Deliza will push the pace even more with that reach, and we'll see a much, much tougher battle for Jack Hermanson. I think Deliza takes a close decision in this one. But that leads me to the one I wore the shirt for, and what I think, not that we don't love the people in the main event, but every time this guy fights, he's the people's main event. It is what it is. It is what it is. The Happy Dad seltzers, the beers will be out, shoes will be off for this one. But he's got another tough test. He just came off maybe the most skilled heavyweight we've ever seen, and he almost knocked him out. He flash knocked him out. If you guys don't know, by now I'm talking about Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. The 4th-ranked heavyweight is going to be fighting Sergey Pavlovich, the 5th-ranked heavyweight, both of which, common denominator, disposed of Derek Lewis, the heavyweight knockout king. And so in a heavyweight division that's, so convoluted at the top, so top-heavy, is John Jones going to fight Curtis Blaydes? Is he going to fight Francis? Is Stipe still fighting? Who knows? These guys, we got a top 5 fight that if somebody wins in the fashion that these guys usually win their fights, we're looking at another contender in heavyweight. Now, I'm picking Tuivasa. I'm picking Tuivasa by knockout because that's how Tuivasa wins. But I think the story of this fight is really where they go after it, because if Tuivasa wins, where does that put him? Because you can't just go fight Gane again. I just mentioned the trifecta at the top. He's not going to fight Derek Lewis again. I think we there's not much to break down here. These guys come out, swang and bang. Tai will throw some leg kicks that you won't see from Pavlovich. Pavlovich might attempt some takedowns that you won't see from Tai Tuivasa, but for the most part, these guys throw heavy right-hand fists. I'm taking Tuivasa. I'm taking Tuivasa in under 2 rounds. That's where he likes to get it done, is that second round. I think Tuivasa's second round KO is always a decent little prop bet. Evan, what do you say?
I'm backing you here. I got Bam Bam winning this fight. And, even though he lost to Cyril Gane, I was honestly probably the most impressed with Tai Tuivasa I've been watching that fight. And the fact that he's coming in on this at plus 160, that honestly, I think that's just a bit disrespectful. I mean, Tuivasa put Cyril Gane down. That was a flash KO. I think he jolted himself awake. I mean, we were seconds away from seeing Tuivasa in this talk for a championship fight. And we haven't really been talking about Sergey Pavlovich on that level. With Tuivasa, Ngannou didn't even do that to Gane, and we talk about the power that he has.
Gane said, I got hit by both. Tuivasa hits harder.
Tuivasa just swings, and I mean, I'm not incredibly impressed with the defense of Sergey Pavlovich when I watch him fight. So he's gonna leave his head out there, and I just think Tuivasa took some shots from Cyril Gane, and it took Gane 3 rounds to put him away. I don't think Pavlovich is quite as good as Cyril Gane. And I think Tuivasa is going to come out and prove why he is the people's main event. And he's going to win this fight by a second.
I think Pavlovich is a fun fighter. I love watching him fight. But he fights like the other guy's not allowed to punch him back.
Yeah.
Like he just goes out there and look what Alistair Overeem did to him in his UFC debut. And that was an old, fading, no horse meat USADA Overeem, with all due respect, and he put him out easily in 1 round.
Yeah.
And I just think that's look at that fight. Look at how Pavlovich fights. Look at what Tuivasa did to Greg Hardy. I think Pavlovich just doesn't have the style for someone like Tuivasa that's going to bite down on that mouthpiece and swing back when you come forward crazy. Yeah. But someone's going down. That's the point.
Yeah.
Lead us into this next one.
Well, next up, we've got We go from heavyweights to flyweights here, and we've got Mateus Nicolau taking on Matt Schnell. The odds, I mean, I don't even like the odds in this fight, and I'm taking Mateus Nicolau pretty handily. I mean, Matt Schnell, we saw the fight against Sumadarji. That dude could get hit with a truck, and he'd probably still be standing up after about 5 seconds. But Mateus Nicolau, I do think he's overall the more well-rounded fighter. He's probably not. I mean, Sumadarji went out there and he was looking to finish the fight. I honestly don't know if Nicolau is going to want to do that. And those fights where they are scrappy is where Schnell is at his best. And I don't know how scrappy this fight's going to get. I think Nicolau is just going to technically outfight him and win this fight by a unanimous decision.
Listen, screw the X's and O's on this one. I'm taking Schnell for the love of taking Schnell. If you don't love this guy's story, he's a country boy that got his start on MMA on an MTV show called Caged. It was terrible. He had like my Justin Bieber haircut, looking goofy on there. The show was awful. The fighters were terrible. But I mean, if you guys haven't seen this Sumadarji fight we're referencing, do your homework, because it's not the comeback of the year. It's the comeback of combat sports history. It was insane.
It's nuts.
He has, I mean, every dog inside you meme you've ever seen, that's about Matt Schnell and nobody else. Let me tell you that right now. And now Evan's right. On paper, Mateus Nicolau is the more technical fighter. He's the more well-rounded fighter. He's the more skilled fighter. He's better on the feet. He's faster on the feet. I actually think it's pretty competitive on the ground, but on the feet where this fight will probably take place. I saw Nicolau fight at UFC Columbus. He's a talented, well-rounded flyweight that doesn't get any talk in this division. He's definitely disrespected, but I'm taking Matt Schnell every time I see that kid's name on paper for the rest of eternity. And I want him to be losing. I want the same thing. I want Schnell to win in a Schnell way. I want fight of the night. I want get a second award in there because you've already locked in comeback of the year. I hope it gets blood. Listen, but the other thing is Sumadarji's a technical fighter too. Matt Schnell just takes it there. I think Nicolau is more experienced than Sumadarji and will know that he's good. But listen, when it gets there, and a cage fight is a cage fight. And I'm taking the boy from Cage, Matt Schnell. Do it again for me. Come on. Don't make me look dumb next week. But now we go to our co-main event. And this fight, I like this fight a lot. What I don't like is the odds. We got Brian Barberena coming in. This guy's in one of the least talked about hot streaks in the UFC right now. Dismantling legends. Matt Brown, again, in Columbus. Saw that one too. That one hurt to watch. And then I think it hurt us all to see what he did to Robbie Lawler. Nobody's done that to Robbie Lawler. Ever. And I think he's going to do something that no one has ever done to RDA. I think when these odds got made, it's people looking at their resumes, not looking at what their recent fights look like. Rafael dos Anjos, dude, I love Renato Moicano more than anyone. But Rafael dos Anjos' best wins in the past 5 years are late replacement week of Paul Felder and week of fly him in from Brazil, Renato Moicano. And then you go in with a guy with Fiziev, and he looked like an old welterweight fighting a young he's slow, he's behind. He can get a takedown, he can't keep you down there. I think Brian Barberena is going to hurt him. He's going to hurt him bad because that's what he does. There's going to be elbows. There's going to be big fists. We got an RDA that has admitted he just wants fun fights. He's not chasing the title anymore. And we got a guy that lives on his own damn farm coming into the press conferences and overalls, laying down elbows on some of the welterweight legends of the UFC. And I think he's going to make a lot of Rafael dos Anjos fans sorry tomorrow. I think he's going to knock him out. He's going to knock your boy out, Brazil. I'm sorry. Evan, you probably don't agree with me, so let me have it.
I don't agree with you here. I do think Rafael dos Anjos is going to win this fight, but I do agree with you in the sense that I think these odds are a bit off. The original odds I saw were Barberena sitting around plus 240-ish area, and I was like, that's good. I understand that. And then I went and looked at the odds before, making this and putting this up here and seeing plus 390. It was a bit shocking when I saw that. Barberena is on a hot streak. He's won 3 in a row. Darian Weeks, Matt Brown, and obviously Robbie Lawler, and that's kind of what got him this fight. When I was first brought on here, one of the first fights I talked about was Brian Barberena versus Robbie Lawler. I went against Malik, and I took Brian Barberena in that fight, and I was right, but I'm not taking him again here. I do think Rafael dos Anjos, as you know, he did just lose to Rafael Fiziev, and I know you're saying that he came in on his opponents where he won against Paul Felder and Renato Moicano. They were short notice fights, but those guys are still very talented fighters in their respects, and he fought them well and he won those fights. But you know, he didn't look great against Fiziev, but he hung on there for a good while. And honestly, other than the fight against Robbie Lawler, I haven't been the most sold on Brian Barberena. I think one thing I still can't get over is the fact that he lost to Jason Witt last year. When he lost to Jason Witt is probably one of the worst fighters I've seen in the UFC. And he lost and he got knocked down by Jason Witt, and he looked slow by the end of that fight. I mean, he looked like he was trudging in mud by the end of that fight. And I don't think Dos Anjos is going to let him have that. I think Dos Anjos is actually going to mix it. I mean, if he wants to have fun fights and wants to go out there and slug with Brian Barberena, he's going to lose. I think he's going to lose. But I don't think he's going to be that slugfesty. I do think he'll try and take this fight to the ground. And when he does, I think that's where he'll get his success and win. I do think it'll be a 29-28 decision win, though, for Rafael dos Anjos.
The one thing I do is I think Rafael dos Anjos, I'm not going to look it up mid-show, but this has to be his first 3-round fight in quite some time.
It's been a while.
And I think he's a guy whose style thrives in 5-rounders.
That's true.
And we'll see how that affects the fight as well. Just something I thought about when you brought up by decision. But take us into the main event.
And in our main event, we've got Stephen Wonderboy Thompson versus Kevin Holland. This fight, I mean, honestly, this has fight of the year potential written all over it. These two are two of the most exciting. Anytime I see Stephen Thompson, anytime I see Kevin Holland, like, I got to watch that fight.
Also, how about definition of a fight you don't want either of them to lose?
I don't want either.
If there could be a draw, I'd never clap my hands.
When I saw Kevin Holland was retiring, I wasn't sold on it, but the fact that it even came out, it saddened me. You know, I was like, I thought Khamzat Chimaev just took his soul there. And you know, you can look. I'm picking Stephen Thompson in this fight. I'm picking the slight underdog here to win. But one thing I was impressed with Kevin Holland is, honestly, even though Khamzat Chimaev, you know, he dominated him, but honestly, when I saw him roll around on the mat there with Chimaev for a little bit, I was a bit impressed when I saw that. But I don't think that's how this fight's going to go. I think this is going to be a 5-round kickboxing striking masterclass between these two who are going to want to make this fun. And I'm going to give the edge to Stephen Thompson, especially with his kicking game. I think Stephen Thompson's kicks are a bit better than Kevin Holland, but Kevin Holland, you know, he's a technical striker in his own right, but I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.
I mean, listen, if you guys have been watching this show for a while, you know, first of all, I'm a huge fan of traditional martial arts. I grew up in karate. That was my first combat sports. I love the strikers. Izzy and Wonderboy, those are my two fights. Those are my boys. I just had to see one lose. I think I'm going to have to hate to do it, but I think I'm going to have to hate to see Wonderboy lose too. I think if we had a kickboxing fight, big gloves, he absolutely outclasses Kevin Holland, a la how he outclassed Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque. But I think we have a Kevin Holland that got thrashed on the ground a couple fights in a row in middleweight and went out, got with the Khabibs, the DCs of the world, and learned how to wrestle. And what some people probably don't know about Kevin Holland is he is a legitimate jiu-jitsu black belt. There's a transition of getting the fight to the ground that he struggles in, and he's often comfortable on his back. But that got him the biggest losses of his career, and he clearly went out and fixed those things. The Granby roll after Granby roll after Granby roll after Granby roll, he put on Chimaev. I mean, sad loss, tough loss, whatever. It was impressive defense. Like, he's clearly
he tried as good as he could, and I was very impressed because he stuck in there as long as he could.
He hit about 6 consecutive Granby rolls, which, if nothing else, that means he's been grappling his ass off. And I just think if he has to listen, he's got the first 3 rounds. He might give up the first 3 rounds because he's going to want to go in there and have a striking fight with. Because listen, we got karate versus kung fu. You can't write this up better. It's like an old school UFC on VHS tape when you would have a style against a style. And it's all. This is a sick fight. You said potential fight of the year. On paper, it is for me, just stylistically.
Mm.
But I just think Wonder Boy doesn't have the ground game anymore. His fights against Tyron Woodley, and then his fight against Gilbert Burns and Pavlov, you just have a different guy once his butt hits the ground. He's had too many highlight reel knockouts. It seems like he's happy to give up a round on his butt because he thinks I can come back next round and wheel kick him. Because that's kind of how he fought Gilbert Burns. He'd be on the ground for the entire round, get up and just spam a wheel kick. And it's like you got to, in a 5-round fight against Kevin Holland, I think you do have to win rounds. And I think he probably will win early rounds when Kevin is there to have fun and talk. But I think the second you see Kevin stop talking, when it gets a little quiet and they're not talking to each other, I think that's when Kevin really kicks it into gear. And I think Kevin Holland, how real or not the retirement thing, I think the coming back, the taking this fight against a ranked guy that can get him back in title contention, I think we're going to see Kevin Holland really take this sport seriously again. Not that he wasn't, but I mean, in all seriousness, he was having full conversations in the cage while losing fights. Like, not a great look, but I think this is going to be a huge fight in his career. I think he's going to win. I do think he wins by decision. I think Wonder Boy is pretty impossible to stop. I mean, you see those moments where he is against the cage and the guy has his back, Gilbert and Ball on there, and Wonder Boy just punches him back in the most disadvantageous position ever. So I don't think Wonder Boy's a dog. He's pretty hard to stop. That if there's a fluke knockout ever to me, it's Anthony Pettis knocking out Wonder Boy. I almost can't. That's one I can't watch. It didn't happen to me, but I'm more excited for a fun fight than I am for a winner coming out of this one. I think Wonder Boy knows he's at the tail end of his career.
Yeah,
he's the 6th ranked welterweight. And he's fighting deep outside the rankings right now. So he's just looking for a fun fight, and that's what we're gonna get. I'd love to see him land one of those wheel kicks, even if it doesn't put him out. One last rendezvous. And if you're unfamiliar, because Wonder Boy is an older guy, if you're a new guard and you want to get into the old guard, watch Stephen Wonder Boy Thompson versus Johnny Hendricks versus Jake Ellenberger, those two specifically, and then watch the Woodley fights, because watching not even a kick, he's really not a kickboxer, watching a karate guy basically beat a wrestler in the UFC is pretty crazy, because that was never supposed to happen. They came to a draw and a split decision loss. He went 1-1 against him, and he'll never make it back to the title, and that hurts me. And that's my spiel. I had to go on a rant because I love Wonder Boy, and I do feel like this might be his last fight, at least with the UFC. But I'd love to see him in karate combat as well. But overall, we have a great stacked card this Saturday.
Yeah.
They even put it on PPV time, so get with the fellas, get some Modelo's, get that fight spirit down in your lungs, hit that YouTube subscribe button, but more importantly, hit that Patreon link. Me and Malik, probably right after the show, are going to talk money, talk plays. I'll make sure my input's in there. Malik never misses either. But get some money on this card. There's a lot of fights. There's a lot of close fights with even money lines. We didn't talk about the prelims at all. There's a lot of bettable fights on those prelims. We'll be back next week to talk the results of this card, as well as the last few cards of the year. As always, stay tuned for articles from both of us. Evan's full predictions will come out. I'll have a little something for you. I don't want to spoil it too much. And we'll see you back here same time next week. Subscribe, like, comment your picks. We don't know who you got. And watch my guy Bam Bam put on a show. And if he wins, send a shoey in. I'll send you $10. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.